You're listening to Rewriting the Rules, the podcast that dares to go deeper than training. I'm Bethany Bell, creator of the Canine Dialogue Dynamics method, and this is where behaviour meets relationship, science meets the soul, and obedience takes a backseat to understanding. Let's change the conversation. Welcome back to Rewriting the Rules. I'm Bethany Bell, and this is the place where we take a deep breath, slow down, and look honestly at the way we live and relate to our dogs. Today I want to talk about something that many people don't notice until it's already well underway. The quiet, often invisible shift from an adult dog to an aging companion. It doesn't always come with fanfare. There may be no dramatic health event, no limp, no diagnosis, no alarming behaviour shift. But one day you realise your dog isn't quite as fast to greet you. They hesitate before jumping into the car. They sleep more deeply. They follow you around the house not out of anxiety, but out of habit, as if they're memorising you while they still can. And in that moment, something in you shifts too. Because aging is not just about bodies slowing down. It's about relationships changing shape. It's about what we begin to carry, emotionally, practically, and even spiritually. So today I want to offer something more than just tips for managing arthritis or feeding softer food. I want to offer a reframing, a way of seeing aging not as a decline, but as a deepening, a time of transition, of tenderness, of listening harder than ever before. Because aging isn't the end of the story. It's when the story begins to speak in softer tones. We hear this phrase a lot. They're slowing down a bit. And it sounds so simple, so manageable. But beneath those words, there's often a quiet grief. One we don't always name. Because when a dog begins to age, it's not just their body that changes. It's the way they move through the world. It's the way they engage, rest, and relate to us. And unless we're paying close attention, we can miss the deeper emotional transitions that happen long before anything clinical appears. Many adult dogs have built routines around purpose. The dog who watches the gate, leads the walk, greets every guest, carries a ball, shadows the children, and follows you room to room. These roles, however subtle, form part of their identity. When they can no longer fulfill them in the same way, maybe because of pain, fatigue, or sensory decline, they don't just lose a task, they lose a part of themselves. And if we're not careful, we might interpret this as apathy, or stubbornness, or just slowing down. But inside, there may be confusion or sadness. And this is why emotional presence matters more than ever during the aging process. Not just adapting routines, but actively validating their shifting sense of self. Some dogs become more physically clingy as they age, following you more closely, needing reassurance in unfamiliar places, but others do the opposite. They seek solitude, rest longer, or become less socially involved. Either way, the dynamic between you shifts, and that shift can stir something in you too. Because even if you're prepared for their aging in theory, the first time they don't get up to greet you, or hesitate before hopping in the car, or sleep through something that usually sparks joy, it stings. You realise time is passing. You start measuring the world in lasts, not out loud, but in the background. And if you're like most people, you don't want to make a big deal of it, so you carry it quietly. But that unspoken grief, the anticipation of loss, it's real. Dogs may not have the words for getting older, but they do feel the change. They feel frustration when their body can't keep up with their desires. They feel vulnerable when they lose control over their space, their mobility, or their routines. And they feel sadness when left behind on walks that they once led. They feel confusion when we stop asking them to do the things that they were once proud of. But they also feel relief when we adjust gently. They feel trust when we give them choices instead of forcing normal. They feel peace when we slow down with them, rather than dragging them forward or leaving them behind. This phase of life doesn't need to be mourned, but it does need to be witnessed. Because when we fail to notice the emotional transitions of aging, we risk withdrawing just when our dogs need us the most. But when we stay present, attuned, and connected, we become not just guardians, but companions through a sacred, tender part of the journey. It's so easy to assume that aging care is mostly physical, joint supplements, softer food, shorter walks, and while those things do matter, The way we adapt is just as important as what we adapt, because aging doesn't just mean losing capability overnight, and it certainly doesn't mean losing the right to make decisions. So in this section, let's look at what practical support can look like in a way that protects not just the dog's body, but their dignity, agency, and confidence. First, we need to rethink the routine without removing purpose. As dogs age, familiar routines provide a deep sense of security, but they often need to be rebalanced, not removed. For example, a dog who used to run alongside you may now walk half the route, and that's okay. They may still want to do the job, like carrying a toy to the car or checking the garden, but in their own time. And instead of replacing routines with nothing, restructure them, breaking them into smaller moments. Let them lead where they still can. Purpose is not just for puppies, it's for life. And then we need to add slow, rich walks. A slower walk does not mean a lesser walk. Sniffing, meandering, choosing the path, and for an aging dog, a 10-minute potter with full agency can be more emotionally fulfilling than a half-an-hour march. This is where the CDD method shines, because you can narrate the environment gently, offer choices, don't rush the pauses because they're part of the walk, and let them decide when to stop, when to engage, and when to simply exist. These moments may seem small, but they're how the dogs anchor to life as their world changes. We need to readjust handling with permission, because older dogs often become very sensitive to touch, especially if they're sore, stiff, or anxious about balance. So where possible, ask for consent before handling, even in routine care. Before lifting them into the car, ask them if they're ready. Before wiping eyes or feet, ask them, shall we do this now? Are you ready? Before putting on the harness, you can say, okay, well, let's pop it over your head and wait for them to settle. Even if they don't respond in words, they respond in body language. And when they feel heard, their stress drops, because they're not just being handled, they're being included. We need to look at modifying the environment. And yes, ramps help, soft bedding helps, raised bowls, non-slip mats, warmer coats, all of these make life easier. But make these adjustments quietly, respectfully. Don't hover over them and don't strip their confidence by anticipating every need before they've even expressed it. We need to avoid micromanagement. So let them try first. Stay near, but not overbearing. Aging with dignity doesn't mean pretending that nothing has changed. It means adjusting with grace, not dominance. And we need to protect social boundaries, because older dogs may become less tolerant of noise, interruption, or overstimulation. And this is not regression, this is wisdom. And you can support them by creating retreat zones in the home that are off limits to other dogs or children, managing greetings with other dogs more intentionally, letting them choose, advocating on their behalf if others ignore the signals, and reducing unnecessary pressure to socialize when they'd rather rest. This does not mean isolating them. It means protecting their right to peace. These practical shifts aren't about limitation. They're about liberation, freeing your dog from pain, confusion, and overstimulation while still giving them room to engage, express, and decide. Because older dogs don't need to be wrapped in cotton wool, they need to be wrapped in understanding. And that begins with seeing what they're capable of and not just what they're losing. There's a moment, often subtle, when you realize that your dog isn't responding to things quite like they used to. They don't hear the front door anymore. They don't notice your hand gestures across the room. They hesitate at thresholds that they've walked through 100 times before. And at first, it's easy to brush off. Maybe they're just tired, distracted, or slowing down. But often, something deeper is happening, not just in the body, but in the brain. As dogs age, they may lose their sharpness in sight, hearing, or both. These changes can feel disorientating, especially for dogs who were once hyper-aware, bold, or independent. A dog going blind may begin to walk more cautiously. A dog losing their hearing might startle more easily. Some withdraw from interactions, not because they're aloof, but because they're unsure what's happening. And when this happens, the world can start to feel unpredictable. Movements appear without warning. Sounds don't connect to meaning anymore, and familiar places can start to feel strange. And this is where dialogue becomes more than helpful. It becomes a lifeline. Many people assume that if a dog is deaf or blind, communication is pointless, that nothing we say or do will matter anymore. But this couldn't be further from the truth, because dogs don't just respond to individual words, They respond to tone, rhythm, familiar voice patterns, the emotional cadence of your presence, the timing of your breath as you speak. Even dogs who are completely deaf will still respond to vibrations, movements, smell, and the feeling of a shared moment. And dogs who are losing their sight often rely even more on your voice to orientate themselves, to find safety, direction, and reassurance. You become their anchor. Aging often brings some degree of cognitive change. For some dogs, it's mild, a little more restless at night, a bit of forgetfulness. But for others, signs of canine cognitive dysfunction, which is dog dementia, may begin to appear. Confusion in familiar rooms, getting stuck behind furniture, changes in sleep or toileting routines, or wandering, pacing, and staring. In these moments, what your dog needs isn't correction, it's orientation, a way back into the present, a familiar tether in an unfamiliar moment. And this is where the 5 phases of dialogue become incredibly powerful, because they aren't built on commands or task-based thinking, they're built on relationship. Even a dog in deep confusion can still soften when they hear the voice they trust. Even when they forget where they are, they remember who you are. In this situation, you want to narrate even more than before. Narrate everything that's happening around them. Small statements like, "We're going into the garden now. Here comes your food bowl. I'm just moving your bed." These small statements become orientating cues in a world that feels increasingly fragmented. So use your voice as a sensory cue. Speak softly as you enter a room so that you don't startle them. Let your tone guide them, a rising inflection to invite movement, a steady rhythm to calm. It's not about what you say, it's about what it feels like when you say it. Practice slowness and gentle repetition. Give your dog more time to process things. Repeat familiar phrases slowly. Use consistent sounds and movement patterns. This helps the aging brain build predictable links between movement, even when memory starts to fade. And touch with clarity and consent. Let them know that you're there before you touch. Stroke in a rhythm that they recognize, and use scent where vision is failing. Even your approach can become a language. And dialogue becomes a devotion. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to prevent the decline or hold back the tide. You just need to stay in relationship, to keep speaking, even when you're not sure how much they're taking in, to keep showing up, even when their eyes glaze or their ears don't twitch. Because your dog may not remember the command for sit, but they remember you, your cadence, your footsteps, the rhythm of your days. And even when language fails, presence remains. And presence is what teaches them all over again that they're not lost, that they're still known, still wanted, and still loved. There comes a point in every shared life where we must loosen our grip on who we thought our dog would always be. The tireless explorer, the social butterfly, the sharp-eyed, fast-footed, always ready for anything companion. And that moment when you first realize that they can't quite walk as far, or greet quite as confidently, or bounce back like they used to, it can be jarring, even painful. Not just because they've changed, but because you have to change with them. We carry so many quiet expectations. They should still enjoy this walk. They used to love playing like this. They should want to come out with me. They're being lazy. Maybe I'm over-accommodating. But aging isn't laziness. And letting go of a previous version of your dog doesn't mean giving up on them. It means meeting them where they are now, not where they used to be, and not where you wish they still were. It means releasing the idea that every day needs to be productive, or enriching, or stimulating, or meaningful in any conventional way. Because sometimes the greatest meaning is found in doing less, not out of neglect, but out of respect. In the CDD method, we talk a lot about presence, and in aging, presence matters more than progress. Your dog doesn't need to be achieving, they need to be accompanied. They need someone who can sit with them quietly in a patch of sun, someone who doesn't rush them down the path, someone who pauses beside them even if they don't know why they stopped. They need to know that rest is allowed, not because they're old, but because they are enough. As dogs age, their focus may turn inward. They may stop caring about things that once drove them wild. They may show less interest in toys, games, or people that they once adored. And at first, this can feel like a loss. But often, it's simply a softening, a reorientation of energy. Older dogs can become more selective, more inward, more attuned to peace and excitement. And if we let them lead, if we stop trying to keep them young in ways that don't serve them anymore, they often become wiser, more present, and more emotionally grounded. Not less alive, just alive differently. And your presence is enough. You don't need to keep them going. You don't need to constantly enrich, entertain, or improve. You simply just need to be there, calm, present, open, letting them show you who they are now and honoring it, even when it hurts. Because this part of life is not about what they do, it's about how they feel and how safe they are in the slow, still company of someone who truly sees them. That's what aging with dignity looks like. Not a race to hold on to youth, but a quiet surrender of the beauty of now. And I want to leave you with something personal, because this isn't just a theory for me, I'm living it. Right now, I'm walking through this stage of life with my own dogs, Steve and Dave, both spaniels, both rescues, and both just over 10 years old. And also with Hank, my parents' English bulldog, who I love deeply. All three of them are the same age, and yet they're aging so differently. Hank, like many bulldogs, is aging faster. He's losing both his sight and his hearing. His steps are a lot slower now. His confusion is more visible now. Sometimes he forgets why he's entered a room, or looks lost in familiar places. But for his breed, he's doing remarkably well, and even through his decline, he's still such a presence, such a character. The kind of dog who holds your heart in a heavy silence between moments. Then there's Dave, my cocker mix. He's still mentally present, still tuned in, but his body is beginning to tell a quieter story. He's clumsier on uneven ground. His walks are slower. His body is marked with the soft shadows of age, lumps, bumps, and a gentle wariness that's new. And then there's Steve, sharp as ever, observant, and very playful. But even he, my black and tan boy, is beginning to grey around the muzzle. Just a little, just enough to catch the light and make me pause when I notice it. 3 dogs, same age, 3 completely different journeys. And each one, in their own way, is teaching me what it means to love without holding on too tightly. We often think that aging means loss, but sometimes in the slowing, in the forgetting, in the quietness, something else begins, something sacred, a new rhythm of companionship, a deepening of presence, a more gentle kind of trust, not built on adventure, but on stillness, on knowing, on sitting beside each other without needing to do anything at all. And if you're walking this path now, if your dog is aging, softening, and fading in tiny increments, I hope you know that you're not alone. I hope you know that there's no right way to feel, no perfect way to respond, no single definition of enough, just love and patience and presence. And that, in the end, is more than enough. And there's something that most people don't talk about when it comes to aging dogs, and it's this. The grieving starts long before the goodbye. It begins quietly, in the moments that seem small to others, but stop time for you. It begins in the first time they stumble, the first time they don't come to the door right away, the first time they look back at you as if they're unsure of their footing, of their place, or of what comes next. And with each of these moments, a quiet question begins to form in your chest. Is this it? Is this the start of the end? And we try to brush it off. We try to stay present, but the fear seeps in. And it's not just the fear of loss. It's the uncertainty, the waiting, the wondering, the ache of not knowing how much more time we have. Every vet visit feels heavier now. Not just an appointment, but a crossing point. You sit in the waiting room, trying to breathe, wondering if this time you won't bring them back home. Even the mornings change. I feel myself reaching out in the dark, instinctively placing my hand on each of their sides, Steve, Dave, and sometimes Hank when I'm with him, needing to feel the warmth of their breath, the gentle rise and fall. Every time I do, I hold my own breath. And when I feel that soft movement beneath my palm, the relief is overwhelming. But it's always followed by a question I wish I could silence. How many more mornings will I feel that relief? This is anticipation grief. It arrives long before the final chapter, and it's real, and it's sacred, and it deserves to be named. Because to love deeply is to begin grieving early, not because we're morbid, but because we know what this relationship means, and what it will mean to lose it. But here's what I'm learning, day by day, moment by moment. Grieving in advance doesn't take away the love, It heightens it. It brings reverence to the ordinary, and it reminds us not to wait, to say the thing, to sit a little bit longer, to notice the greying muzzle and call it beautiful, and to thank them again and again just for being. And in that space, we discover something unexpected, that the ache of what we might lose can make the present more sacred than ever. But there's something else, something I can't quite name, something subtle, sacred, and profound. When I look back at the earlier years, when Steve, Dave, and Hank were young, full of energy and mischief, there's a part of me that aches. And not just because I miss it, but because life was faster then. It's always felt like there was time to do things we planned, time to make memories later, time to get it eventually. And yet now everything's different. Now every moment matters. When I hug my dogs now, I don't rush it. I don't multitask. I don't scroll with one hand while mindlessly stroking them with the other. I stop. I put the phone down. I stroke Steve's soft nose bridge, up across to his forehead. I feel the warmth of Dave curled beside me, heavier now, more settled. I nuzzle them both, inhale that comforting, biscuity smell that I've never been able to describe, but I know I'll never forget. And Hank, with his slower steps and searching eyes, I let him guide the pace. Even in his confusion, I stay beside him, anchoring him to what he still remembers, what still feels safe. These are not doing nothing moments. These are everything. I hold their paws more often. I watch their chest rise and fall. And when they sleep beside me, I choose to stay present, because I know now, presence is everything. I make sure to take them to their favourite places, especially the beach, even when I don't feel like it at first, because who knows when it might be the last time that they swim or run or chase the waves in the salt wind. And every single time that I go anyway, I'm glad I did, because they can still run, they can still swim, and they can still smile at the sea. And one day when they can't, I suspect that we'll still go, still sit and watch the sunset over the horizon, and still be together, but it will just look different. And yes, when your dog begins to age, you do start to lose things. Their stamina, their hearing, their certainty, and their sharpness. But there's something that you gain too. You gain presence, you gain stillness, you gain depth. You gain the kind of connection that no youth, no training, and no perfect life can ever replace. It's quieter, it's slower, it's heavier, but in the best way. And when the day comes that they're no longer beside you, these moments, these deeply felt moments, will be what remains. Not just the memories, but the knowing that you didn't waste it, that you were there, that you were with them fully, completely, reverently. And that is what it means to grow old together. So if your dog is aging, or you're just beginning to notice the first subtle signs, know that you're not alone. This journey isn't about endings. It's about presence. It's about love that matures. And it's about slowing down enough to realize that this is the part that matters the most. And while much of this journey is emotional, there is a lot of practical changes that quietly unfold alongside it. You might notice stiffness where they stand, hesitation on slippery floors, or a growing sensitivity of cold. Their eyes may cloud over, hearing may fade, sleep patterns may shift, and sometimes so does toileting. These are not signs of failure. They're signs that your dog is asking you to meet them where they are now and not where they used to be. Soft bedding, slower walks, gentle supplements, routines that don't rush, familiar scents and gentle touch, the kind of care that says, I see you, I still know you, and I'm still here. There's no perfect plan for aging, just thoughtful adaptation, one day at a time, rooted in love, presence, and a promise that they won't walk this chapter alone. Next time on Rewriting the Rules, we'll be diving into something that touches every bowl, every body, and every behaviour. What's in the food bowl changes everything. We'll explore how nutrition shapes not just your dog's health, but their emotional world, behavioural responses, and ability to learn and regulate. It's more than just feeding, it's foundational. Until then, hold your dogs close and know that in every quiet moment, you're doing more than enough. Thank you for rewriting the rules with me. See you next Thursday.